Now, KwaZulu-Natal floods have been declared a disaster. This move will help unlock funds for the affected communities and municipalities. Here to unpack the significance of this declaration, I'm joined by Dodovu, chairperson of the Select Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, and Tegwini, Executive Mayor, hopefully will be joining us also in this hour to unpack that a little bit further. But let me welcome you, Mr. Dodovu, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. First and foremost, do we as a country need a review of the legislative and maybe even institutional framework to increase the effectiveness of our disaster risk management system or even our response?
Yes, I think we need to do that, especially in the wake of what is happening now in KwaZulu-Natal. I think there are fault lines. We are exposed that we need to go back to the drawing board and assess our legislation as it currently stands, and also assess the regulations that are currently being promulgated by the national government. We need to do that because disasters occur unintentionally, they occur in a natural way, but as a country, we need to be ready in terms of putting up the necessary institutions, the necessary systems and structures in place to ensure that once they occur, we are able to mitigate those disasters. And what is happening in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment, it says to us we need to do more and better to ready ourselves for such eventualities.
What tools then do local governments have, to your knowledge as Parliament currently, to be able to respond proactively, for example, to take steps? One, at this particular point, because we're in a crisis, let's talk at the disaster level, as far as humanitarian and emergency relief coordination is concerned.
All provinces, in terms of the law, are expected to set up the disaster management centers so that when such occurrences happen, they are able to promptly respond. Even at municipal level, it is quite important that all municipalities must have such mechanisms in place. But you understand that in the case of KwaZulu-Natal, for example, most of the municipalities are in the rural setup of the province and they lack the necessary capacity, which I think, in my view, it needs to be built up. But at this point in time, as Parliament, we are quite satisfied in terms of how government at all levels, at national level, at provincial level, and municipal level, have responded to these disasters in terms of giving people the humanitarian assistance, in terms of providing shelters to the people, in terms of making sure that those who are displaced are given the necessary support, and we are quite satisfied. But what makes us more happy is that the government as a whole has declared this disaster a very, very serious problem, and as such, they are going to give the support to the KwaZulu-Natal province in order to deal with the current situation that it is facing. It is quite important. They must do more and better to ensure that at the end of the day, all efforts are coordinated in a partnership way to ensure that we attend to the problems.
Yeah. In terms of your oversight role as Parliament, here's the criticism, and certainly this one would argue from the experts that it hinders our disaster risk management. There is a lack of information management system. What information am I talking about? I'm talking about information collected, for example, around the mapping capacity that points out risk information and stress levels and accessibility to particular areas. We are almost in the back foot right now in our response, right? You have, for example, health professionals who we'll speak to in a moment who are saying, we can't move out of the townships where we are stuck right now, or can emergency services or health services be able to move in? So there is a sense that, for example, we don't have that information readily available in an integrated system that is centralized in a manner that even national, at this particular point, could be able to pick up that information and know exactly where the risk is. Right now, national, by all means and purposes, is reliant on the local government, even before they can declare a state of emergency. And this means that the process is going to take close to 3 days. In some instances, there are people right now, as we speak, who have not had water for 3 days, and they don't even know when that water is going to come in.
Yeah, there is a problem that we need to confront as a country. For example, our view as a committee is that the way that municipalities plan their townships becomes problem. Town planning is quite critical so that people are located in very, very good areas when such disasters happen, we are able to bring in the police, we are able to bring in the soldiers, we are able to bring in the medical support to those particular communities. And as matters stand, it is quite clear that other areas are inaccessible to ensure that we attend to this particular problem. This is at the point of planning to ensure that we alleviate this particular problem. But going forward, if such disasters happen, it is quite important that in a very coordinated way, in a spirit of intergovernmental relations, all the spheres must come together and other sectors of the society to come and resolve this particular problem. But what is also important in our view, it is that this area must be adequately funded to ensure that municipalities are supported in that instance. And in case that this happens, that is why our view as a committee was that we must declare this particular area a disaster area in terms of the legislation, so that the necessary funds must be unlocked at all levels of government to support this initiative to ensure that at the end of the day, all the people are helped. And I understand the predicament that the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal is facing at the moment, and we are hopeful that if they put more effort, if they put more resources, if they ensure that the necessary materials and equipment is available, they are going to be in the position to help those particular people who need water at this stage, who need sanitary facilities and all the necessary services. And if they work in a joint coordinated way, they will in a speedy way ensure that they address the issues that are problematic in respect of the schools that are damaged, in respect of the health facilities that are damaged, because people at the end of the day need to access those particular services. And it is quite important that they must move promptly to ensure that all those particular issues are addressed.
But why are the funds, though, Mr. Dodovu, being unlocked now at this late stage? Isn't there an integrated disaster risk management measure in place that speaks to all ministries, that speaks to all municipalities' budgets, that they are able to have disaster risk management funding readily available and not have to wait for the state to be able to declare before money is released?
No, in the first place, you must understand that the issue of disaster is handled by the Department of COCTA at national level. It is this department that organize and coordinate different sector departments to ensure that once these eventualities are obtained, they are able to respond as such. But we must understand that the government, they operate with a particular budget, and you can't all the time set millions and millions of rands for disaster. What if they do not happen? And as I pointed out in the beginning, if they plan properly, if township establishment are done in a proper way, we will then be able to attend to these particular problems. If they build bridges in a proper way, these particular problems will be alleviated. But my view is that there is a need for that coordination so that we mitigate this, so that once this happens, we are able to respond promptly and deal with those particular issues. Our committee will be engaging with the department in the next few weeks to assess the situation that is obtained at the moment, and part of it will be to actually visit those particular areas and the communities that are displaced to get from them exactly what is it that they can be done to ensure that we take these particular processes forward.
Now, when we speak then of that, as you put it, that Disaster Risk Management Act staying and sitting at COCTA, do you think that is the best place for it to sit at COCTA? And there are some who've suggested, for example, an example of it being integrated into the State Security apparatus and with some development interventions in place. Why? Because...
No, our view is that where it is located, it is proper, and our view is that COGTA is doing its best to coordinate this effort to ensure that it deals with all the departments that are involved. State security deals with matters of intelligence and all of that. And I don't think that as it currently stands, it has the necessary capacity to can coordinate all the departments. COGTA is doing quite well because, as I pointed out, there is a National Disaster Management Center that is coordinating this, that is looking at all sorts of disasters that are happening, not only the floods that happen there. There are sometimes other disasters that happen in different provinces, and our view is that COGTA is okay. They account to us as Parliament to tell us in precision what is it that they are doing with the funds that are allocated, and in terms of checking whether this National Disaster Management Center is working, is fully equipped, it has the necessary capacity to deal with such eventualities. And our view is that let us allow the situation go, let us give all the support that is necessary, let all the players and sectors come on board, municipalities, the provincial government and national government, let them deal with all these particular aspects. Let all other agencies of the state come to the party to ensure that we support these particular people, coordinated by COGTA, because we think that this cooperative governance department is doing quite well to ensure that all these issues are attended to.
So you're saying as Parliament you're convinced that in terms of disaster risk management information, COGTA is best placed. Why am I asking you this?
Yes.
You are talking here, Mr. Dodovu, the protection of a public investment, right? Public investment in funds that you're talking about that have been invested in public works infrastructure, in water, in health, in education, billions and billions of rands that we need to protect. Do you think COGTA as an organization is able to keep a watch on that risk assessment information?
Yes, as a department, because as a department, it is coordinating. Remember that its work is to coordinate all these sector departments. When it is problems related to water, the disasters related to water, it is able to coordinate with the Department of Water. When it is violence and the police, it is able to coordinate with the police and the security cluster. When it is the issue of the floods, it is able to coordinate with the relevant departments. If it is health, it is also equally able to coordinate. Their work is to coordinate and ensure that the work is done to ensure that we attend to the problems as the country faces them. And our view is that, of course, with the resources that are in place, with the personnel that is in place, it can do more and better to ensure that it addresses those particular issues. Very few people or no people whatsoever anticipated what would happen in the last 3 days in KwaZulu-Natal in terms of the way, the magnitude of the rain that we experience in that part of the country. And as I pointed out, in my respective view, given the nature of the challenges, given the nature of the natural problem that occur, I think the response was prompt. I think government at the highest level, including the president, they responded, and all of these people were coordinated by the Department of COGTA that was playing a lead in terms of making sure that it is doing that. And in our view, it continues to do that. But as I pointed out, in our discussions with them, as we play our oversight question, we are going to ask them these pertinent questions so that at the end of the day, as Parliament, we are satisfied that they are doing what they are supposed to do to attend to these problems as experienced, for example, in the case of KwaZulu-Natal at the moment.
Give us clarity then from your understanding as Parliament, right, as far as the early warning systems that we currently have in the country. I believe through a number of conversations that there is an early warning system, and from municipalities' point of view, that early warning system was activated. But what are the roles and responsibilities of the early warning action that needs to be taken across all sectors as far as national, as far as local level is concerned? So what is your expectation as Parliament that all these sectors would have responded in such a way as far as the early warning system to the communities is concerned?
Yes, they must, all of them, irrespective, have the early warning system. They must anticipate what is going to happen at a particular time so that they are able to respond. And part of the problem that we experience, I think, in all the areas of government, it is that many departments lack that. They are unable to anticipate where the problem is going to occur. And ultimately, they become reactive to the situation that happens, like, for example, in this particular case. But I'm not necessarily saying that they anticipated that the wind, the rainfall will happen in the way that it did. But lack of early warning systems is one of the limitations of government, because now the government, at the end of the day, it becomes reactive rather than becoming proactive in terms of resolving the problems at hand. And the expectation is that in a very, very coordinated way, in an intergovernmental way, in a cooperative, in the spirit of cooperative governance, it is quite important that they must establish these mechanisms so that they are ready for any action, so that when that happens, they respond promptly, they reduce the damage, and they mitigate the circumstances which will have devastating consequences for either the economy, for the social services, even for the psychological stress that our people will experience. And these early warning systems are quite critical to ensure that we attend to such problems.
All right. Then let's talk about, part of the constituency work that parliamentarians do is to interact with communities. And we have been talking broadly about a design of an early warning system, or even a response that empowers communities and people to protect their own lives and livelihoods. So education campaigns in schools, in our curriculum, where it's becoming clear with global warming that especially in our coastal areas, these kinds of weather events are going to become a little bit more regular. How do you imagine this should be approached?
In the first place, the Department of Education, for example, in the way that we have asked the question, is that it must integrate all of these in the curriculum so that young people, learners at our schools, they must know this. They must know how they respond to such incidents, because they occur. And given what we've just spelled out, globally this is a problem. The world has changed quite drastically, and we need to be ever ready to ensure that we attend to this. And if we educate both our learners at our school levels, as well as our communities, on how to respond to this, it will make an indelible contribution in terms of how we must move our country forward and mitigate and reduce the level of the risks that our communities are often exposed in respect of these particular things. I quite agree with you that we need to do something in incorporating such elements into our curriculum.
So people then at the center of the disaster right now, they are hearing that National has declared a state of disaster. What should their expectation be, and how should they hold accountable those who do not, I suppose, act as according to what is rightfully their right at this particular point in time in terms of the reception of services?
Firstly, the expectation is that there is going to be funds unlocked, more funds are going to be available to the different sector departments to ameliorate the situation. Secondly, we expect that there must be reinforcements in terms of the personnel, in terms of the equipment, in terms of the emergency services that must go to those communities that are affected. And the communities must keep watch in terms of what is it that is going to happen at the end of the day, because that is quite important. And as I pointed out, our role as Parliament will be speedy to know what is it in precision that the government has done to attend to this particular problem, and hold government accountable, and call all of these departments which were involved in the form of the reports that will enable us to make an objective assessment whether they have achieved the objectives of saving the lives of the people, of saving the livelihood, of repairing what was damaged and by this devastation. This is the role that we are going to play. But underpinning that role will be to ensure that we engage our own communities so that they must tell us from their own view the level of the response of the government, whether the government did what was expected of them or not, and that more lives, more livelihood, more infrastructure and services were saved as a result of that intervention of the government. We will be seized with that particular aspect to ensure that at the end of the day, the monies that are appropriated, for example, for this purpose are used for the intended purpose.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we experience this problem when the money is available, you have all those who have ulterior motives. They want to do other things that will not serve the general well-being of our people. We expect every cent and rent that is going to be appropriated for this purpose must be accounted for, and it must be used for the purpose intended. And as I pointed out, reinforcements are quite necessary to ensure that we attend to this problem.
So what tool are you going to use while you're on that? Because I was going to ask you that very same question. What tool are you going to use to ensure that those who are initiating, who are organizing, who are coordinating and implementing this response are doing that by the book? Of course, you don't want to stifle emergency response here because it has to be an emergency response. But what we've experienced, and you will agree, is that during a time of COVID when people were dying of a disease that we all didn't know what it was about, there are people who saw this as an opportunity to steal money.
Exactly. What we are going to do, we are going to sort the reports from the authorities, from those who are responsible. My committee will be visiting KwaZulu-Natal in the nearest future. We are already planning for that. Actually, initially, we were supposed to go next week to KwaZulu-Natal, but for other purposes of engaging with the municipalities. In the wake of what has ensued this week, we have suspended that because our focus for KwaZulu-Natal will be to engage with the communities, is to check the extent in which this devastation has affected the people, is to ensure that clearly what was damaged is repaired as a matter of extreme urgency, because failure to do that, it will affect the schools, the kids will not go to school, it will affect the hospitals because health facilities will be damaged, it will affect even the economic life of our own people. But more importantly, it will affect these people who are affected by this. The stress levels has skyrocketed, and we need to find ways of helping them. We will be going there to see by ourselves whether what they intended doing, they have done it to the best satisfaction of the communities. But as I pointed out, to hold government accountable for their own actions in respect of performing our oversight function, to ensure that through their reports, which some of them should be audited, that they have spent the monies wisely for the benefit of our communities. We will continue to do that job because it is in the best interest of our people, our country, to ensure that the money spent for the purpose intended.
That is Cooperative Select Committee Chairperson China Dodovu. I appreciate your time, Sam. Thank you very much for joining us at